Welcome to Salute and Biohacking podcast. My name is Vanessa Bertinotti and my mission is to build a tribe that shares my same passion for health optimization and biohacking by bringing to the table experts and people who inspire me. If you are not yet familiar with this term, biohacking is basically the art of developing our potential. The element that characterizes all my guests is the belief that improving one's health in a preventive form is always more beneficial than treating disease. Many diseases could be prevented if people began to be more aware of their bodies and how they function. All the information contained in this podcast is purely informative and does not replace medical or therapeutic consultancy. If you're a fan of this podcast, please help me spread it to as many people as possible. I explain how to rate the podcast, write a review, or make a donation on my website, www.thehappyfew.com. Find a link to my website in the show notes of this episode. Today, we will understand why putting an infrared sauna in our home is a great way to prevent disease and promote a healthy and relaxed life with my guest, Johannes Kettelhodt. Johannes is the co-founder and co-CEO of Clearlight Saunas International, providing infrared saunas and health stacking system to Europe and Australasia. Johannes co-founded Clearlight Saunas International at age 23, while finishing his engineering studies and living overseas in New Zealand. Since then, he's been at the core of promoting Clearlight globally and providing the newest health and wellness technologies to the public. Recent launches include the Sauna Show podcast and providing various good eBooks around sauna use and related therapies. For my community, Clearlight Sauna is offering a discount code. Just add on clearlightsaunas.eu and use the code VANE100 to get €100 off on top of any other sale promotion. Johannes, welcome to the show.
Vanessa, thank you so much. I'm very glad that we finally made it work and very excited to dive deeper on the topics of heat, infrared saunas and health.
Great. I'm really thrilled to have you here and thanks for joining us today from Philippines today, right? You are in the hot weather.
Yeah, I'm in the hot weather. So, as you know, I just started a break. I started a health break actually for 6 months. I've been working a lot over the last 10 years. And now it's really time to become the best version of myself to, really grow the podcast as well and tackle a few health issues that I have.
Great. It's always a good way also to show, to be current on what you preach and what you do. So I wish you all the best for this break to dive in other topics and to learn from life. But before we dive into today's topic, can you tell us about your journey, how it all started, and what is your mission?
Sure. Thanks, Vanessa. I'd love to. So my background actually is engineering, renewable engineering. I'm German. I was born in Germany. I was raised in northern Germany, and I still spend a lot of my time in northern Germany. And I think those people that are Germans know that a lot of Germans are engineers, so that's what I did as well. But in reflecting and in hindsight, I always had a passion for health. My grandma always used to joke that I actually preferred making a garden salad over eating a cake. So some of the things really, they've always been there, but yeah. I think they only come to the public. I think once you really reflect and once you think about it. But excuse me. So with that, I always felt very drawn to nature and but also to this electricity, to technology, and I think technology is such a powerful thing nowadays. I mean, we live in a world now where AI is really slowly taking over, but I think even back then, which is 2008 or 2009, there's a lot of truth actually in health technology as well. And whilst I really wasn't into that, it's definitely been around. So, funnily enough, I actually studied in New Zealand. That's where I met my business partner. And he had been to the Longevity Now conference in LA for many years. He was actually one of the organizers, amongst other things. And that's where he got to know David Wolf, who some of you actually might still know. But he also got to know Clearlight, which back then was a much smaller company, but they were the only company that successfully mitigated electromagnetic frequencies. And then we essentially talked about, hey, wouldn't it be great if we made these awesome saunas available in other countries? And, from a thought, we then literally created a website and just tested it out in New Zealand. And now 10 years later, we still actively serve New Zealand, we actively serve Australia, but obviously all of Europe as well. And it's been a fantastic journey to really diving deeper into health and wellness, to obviously also running a business. That's something that you can't really learn in uni, I think. And we're sort of now also at a point where, yes, we do these infrared saunas, but we also launched other products and we launched a podcast, etc. Some of the things you actually picked up in the introduction.
Awesome. And you are also a biohacker. What biohacking means to you, and what do you like about this movement?
Yeah, I really struggle a little bit with the definition of biohacking because it's so broad, right?
Yeah.
I think you obviously said it, it really comes down to identifying your true potential. To me, it's really about actually being in tune with nature and feeling good about it, but obviously also, sort of getting the best out of me, or bringing the best that I can do. So I've actually just done a Wim Hof retreat in Poland, which was fantastic. It combines breath work, the cold, and obviously a sense of community, which I found amazing. And I think, if you live in Europe, in particular Northern Europe, ice bathing is for free in winter, right? Like literally just go into the river, go into the sea. And to me, it's a fantastic biohack because it's health proven, right? Like, so it gives you a lot of health benefits, but the mental clarity that you get out of it is phenomenal too. I think exercise is probably, my number one biohack. In fact, I think, Peter Attia said in his book, exercise is the most powerful drug. So I'll probably stick with that.
Yeah.
But, there's so much we can do. And I think a lot of the things that you may actually already do may technically be categorized as biohacking. So I think whatever gives you the biggest push of energy and what makes you feel great, do more of that. And I think that's then essentially what biohacking also stands for.
Fantastic. Yeah. And today we will talk about the science also behind heating. Can you dive in a bit more about the science really that stands behind heating, so we understand a bit more why also sauna comes from?
Yeah, I think the word, heat, and you touched base on that, it's not just a sauna. It's a form of heat application that literally has been practiced in many different cultures, right? Like, I'm currently in the Philippines, and I haven't seen a sauna here, but I, for instance, know that, for instance, in the, in Nicaragua, and I think also in Guatemala, they used to build these sweat lodges, differently to the ones that I know, but all these cultures, including Japan, including China, including, probably even parts of India, had some sort of heat culture. And even if you walk into, or even if you visit some of these cultures today, they still have some sort of heat. You go to Turkey, you have a Turkish hammam. You go to Russia, you have the banyas, and so forth. It goes, and what that really signals, I think, is that heat, if it's controlled, and obviously if it makes you uncomfortable, but you can still control it, makes you sweat. It used to be a cleansing ceremony for a lot of these cultures to really, once a week or once a month or potentially even once a day to go through that and really cleanse themselves of bad thoughts, of bad energy, but also essentially of bad substances that they might have taken into the body. And I think therefore traditionally these heat appliances or heat therapies were actually used more from a cultural perspective, because back in the days the people didn't actually really know that you detoxify. Yes, they felt it, and spiritually that might have been true, but obviously as as the science has really come out and as the internet and the technology has really evolved, that's truly when we actually understand globally the effect of heat therapy. Right, so I think it's very important to say that the people back then didn't necessarily do it for the health reasons that they do it today, but rather for spiritual and for cleansing reasons. And obviously, that has, in modern times, and we're talking decades, maybe even centuries, this has actually further developed, right? So the term sauna, I think, is it's actually protected under the Finnish heritage name. The Finns, or the same also with the Estonians, are very, very particular about what a sauna means. An infrared sauna, based on their definition, wouldn't actually qualify for a sauna. And I think throughout the years, we've really seen more and more heat appliances come to nature. And I know you're in northern Italy, or in Switzerland. You have saunas there. I grew up in northern Germany. We have saunas there. So fortunately, I think throughout the decades and throughout the cultural awakening, we've actually seen a lot more saunas actually come to the market. And there are different types of saunas. Some are traditional saunas. We obviously produce infrared saunas, which I can talk about a little bit more. You have the banyas, you have the hammams, which in some way all actually classify a little bit as a sauna. And then in more recent years, so we're talking sort of maybe the last 5 to 10 years, maybe 15 years, a lot more studies have actually come out really shining a spotlight on the amazing health benefits of heat therapy. This could be jacuzzi, so it could be prolonged sessions of hot bath, like in a jacuzzi or like in a Japanese hot bath. Obviously, frequent sauna use has been great. More recently, you've seen actually more studies on infrared saunas come out, and I think that's really the benefit of the last 5 to 10 years and the experience of technology coming in, spreading the knowledge, looking at these studies, and obviously also researchers such as Dr. Rhonda Patrick really spreading the word on why heat therapy and why sauna therapy is actually so beneficial for your health.
Brilliant, yeah. And what are the health benefits of a good infrared sauna compared to all these different kind of sauna you mentioned?
Yeah, let's maybe talk about health benefits in general. And then we can talk about an infrared sauna.
Okay.
Any type of heat environment is going to raise your core temperature, right? Like at the moment, I'm here at 31 degrees. Naturally, I do have actually a slightly higher body temperature, and my body actually needs to start sweating in order to make sure that I don't get too hot. If you go to a hot bath, like a Japanese bath, or if you go into the sauna, you expose your natural body conditions, meaning typically 36.9 degrees Celsius, to this increased heat environment. If you sit in hot water, that's one effect, but ultimately in the long run, your core temperatures go up and your body starts sweating. I think we all know that feeling. Same with a hot shower. A sauna even more extreme, right? Like you literally sit in a hot room, and this hot room has hot air, and that essentially increases the core temperature. So that's what I think all of these types of heat treatments and saunas have in common. They all raise your core temperature. And what that does, it essentially increases vessel dilation. It makes sure that your cardiovascular system actually gets a workout. Mitochondria can be activated depending on the type of sauna. We can actually get an artificial fever, which strengthens the immune system and increases the count of white blood cells. Inflammation markers go down. On certain more frequent sauna use, essentially it reduces the all-cause mortality risk. For instance, in a Finnish study with 2,000 men, it really showed that if you do it 5 to 7 times a week, it can actually reduce your all-cause mortality risk by 43%. So these are big numbers, and I think I'm a little bit tired of essentially, is this better or is that better? I think they all have their place. They all work through heat. They all work through raising your core temperature, and our body then needs to react to that. And that's the same for an infrared sauna. It's just that the mechanism of the heat is different, right? In a traditional sauna, you have a stove, you go there, you put water on there, and then it gets hot. A bath would, for instance, use lukewarm water or warm water. A hammam would use steam, like a steam sauna. And an infrared sauna uses infrared heating panels. So, and if I probably just explain the basics quickly. Yes, infrared please. Light is invisible light. And part of the infrared spectrum is actually visible as well. You talk about near, middle, and far infrared. That's what probably a lot of people have heard already. And these are natural wavelengths, meaning these have natural occurrences in nature. So the sunlight, for instance, consists of all three types of infrared, and approximately 50% of sunlight is actually infrared light. But then you have a fire or a heating element, they also emit infrared. We humans emit infrared. We emit far infrared, very gentle heat. But if you rub your two hands and you hold them apart from like a centimeter or two, you actually feel that we emit and we absorb heat as well. So, that's overall infrared. And obviously, when we talk about an infrared sauna, we use this type of light, this type of invisible light that we perceive as warmth or as heat, and we place these heaters in a sauna. These saunas can be a square meter, literally a meter by a meter, or they can be bigger. They can be 2.5 meters times 2.5 meters. And in these boxes or in these saunas, we have infrared heaters, and these infrared heaters can be made of different materials. Some are carbon, some are ceramic. There are different attributes to each of these materials. And if it's a good infrared sauna, the heaters will generate infrared heat. This is light. This light is essentially being absorbed by our skin and therefore increases our core temperature through light. So not through hot air like in a traditional sauna, but through infrared light that is being absorbed through our skin. And that's the mechanism of an infrared sauna. It's literally light inside a sauna. This is absorbed by the skin, which then raises the core temperature. So again, we have heat inducement, but it's fundamentally different to other heat devices.
Got you. You explained the basics and the fundamentals about behind this infrared sauna, and so you explain how the sauna, the infrared sauna works, and also maybe if you can explain why this infrared heat and technology are responsible for all these benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and I think again we have to look back at the heat fundamentals. So, the benefits of any type of heat therapy, whether you talk traditional saunas or whether you talk infrared saunas, they all lie in the fact that they naturally increase your core temperature.
Okay.
Right, and I think that's always the basic mechanism. In the raise of the core temperature, a few things happen. The first one is vessel dilation, which we know is very important for our blood pressure, but also for the blood and the overall inflammation. We have a cardiovascular workout, right? So it's actually been shown that regular sauna use has the same effect as cardio in order, when it comes to reducing the blood pressure. So, whilst we sit in there and we relax, our heart needs to pump faster and more stronger in order to make sure that obviously the entire body, our entire internal system really works well. That's another important one. And obviously over time, if we do this long enough, our body starts sweating. Sweating is the body's mechanism to cool the body. So that already signals that the core temperature goes up and we essentially create an artificial fever. Fever is obviously the body's mechanism in order to really making sure that the immune system is strong, that the white blood cells are being increased as well. And overall, when we have a fever, it essentially signals the body that, the immune system is active, is strong. If we had a virus or bacteria, these would essentially be fought through the internal immune system. And we're able to stimulate that through a type of infrared sauna, but also through a type of a traditional sauna if we stayed in there long enough. So therefore, we're actually making our entire body more resilient. We expose our body to this heat environment, to the infrared heat. That increases the core temperature, and our body needs to deal with that stress. Heat is often referred to as a type of hermetic stress, meaning positive stress. Challenges our body, and our body needs to react to that. And obviously the health benefits of that are, as I mentioned, about cardiovascular workout, vessel dilation, reduction of inflammation. If you do it long enough, we have the activation of heat shock proteins. Infrared saunas are very well known for the detoxification, because obviously, we now know that the skin is our largest organ of the body, and we are essentially able to sweat out toxins, PCA, PCBs through our sweat, and sometimes or oftentimes even more effectively than our internal detoxification organs. So the list is really endless when it comes to the benefits of an infrared sauna, or to any type of heat sauna in general. And I think I just want to make it very clear, I'm not a fan of saying the traditional sauna is the only way or the infrared sauna is the only way. To me, both have their place, and I can talk a little bit more about how I think they should really be implemented on a daily basis. But to me, it's fundamentally clear that heat therapy is brilliant for the health. We haven't talked about the mind, the fact that obviously we are able to regulate our nervous system. We're de-stressing. We're taking a break literally from a very information-driven and stress-driven society. And to me, that makes the infrared sauna and the sauna in general probably one of the number one biohacks in the world.
It makes perfect sense, and you beautifully explain all the why behind the benefit of the heating, basically. And we know that the toxins are everywhere in our water, hair, food, soap, shampoos, even in the clothes we wear. Infrared sauna have been shown, as you said, to detoxify the human body from certain chemicals and toxins and heavy metals. And can you maybe talk about the detoxification process and how long should we stay in an infrared sauna for detoxification purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's, again, like if I may just circle back a little bit on the detoxification topic, I think we can all agree that the term detoxification has probably been overused over the last few years. I think you buy a cream, you buy a tea.
Yeah.
I don't know, you buy everything is detox nowadays. You buy, juice fasting sets for 3 or 4 days of a juice fast, and that's supposed to detoxify, right? And I think, therefore, this term is oftentimes misled.
Yes.
What I think the actual term detoxification means is like literally the transport of toxins out of our body or away from our body. We might, for instance, have toxins on our skin as well, in which case not from within the body. So therefore, I think that's a very important distinguishment. I think the second one is really that obviously through the internal organs, meaning liver, kidneys, gallbladder to some extent, we obviously do have certain organs that are normally responsible for our body's detoxification. And, they've been working for essentially since, forever. Essentially, since we human have been alive, I think we've really been able to detoxify. The problem is that I think, as you touch base, in modern times, the overall pollution and the overall occurrence and appearance of toxins in our environment has been on a record high. You touch base on that. Some of that is obviously in the food that we consume, even if we buy organic. There's always going to be some toxins on there. We have pollutants, obviously in our water, in the air, in our clothes, in the cosmetic or chemicals that we essentially use on a day-to-day basis. And therefore, I think overall, given that the exposure to toxins is higher, but our internal body hasn't actually adapted to this way of detoxifying, we do see more and more people actually being, or having high numbers of toxins. And this could be heavy metals. We're talking about cadmium, about aluminium, etc. But it could also be microplastics such as PCA, BCBs. It could be about phthalates, which is also some sort of, I think in Germany you call them soft makers. I don't 100% know the exact term, but essentially, we have an array of toxins in our body, and you can measure those. You can literally, do a blood test. For instance, I've done mine with Omnos in the UK, where they essentially give you a very clear profile of the toxins that you have in the body. And oftentimes, these toxins are higher than we want them to be. And that is in a healthy human being, such as myself, which I do consider myself fairly healthy. I did have a very high number of toxins in my body and in my blood. Some of them are outside of my control. Obviously the air that we breathe, and if we live in a city, we can't control that. But some of them we can control, for instance, through food, through water, through the type of cosmetica that we use. So that itself, I think, is the backstory of toxins in general. And now, if you want to detoxify, surely, the infrared sauna is not just the holy grail, so to speak, but it can be a very effective tool when it comes to mitigating and dissolving some of the toxins from our body. What we know nowadays is that toxins are primarily stored in our fat cells. So, talk about the organs, that's essentially where we have primarily the fat buildup, or for instance also on the bum or on the legs, primarily women. And that's oftentimes where we actually find higher proportions of toxins, such as heavy metals. And this, for a long time, it was not actually believed that sweating can detoxify the body until in 2013, I think, a study really came out that actually compared the markers or the concentrations of certain toxins and microplastics when detoxifying through sweat compared to the urine or the internal detoxification organs. And this study found that sweat actually can be, for certain materials, a much more effective way to detoxify the body. For aluminium, for instance, it was 25 times more effective. For cadmium, it was 7 times more effective. So that really clearly showed that, our skin can actually support us in detoxifying. And what that also shows is that essentially our skin is like a sponge, meaning it can absorb things, but it also can emit things. So whatever we put on our skin, obviously penetrates inside our body, and therefore, that's also technically how we can actually increase the intake of toxins. And that was in 2013. And then from that, a lot of things happened. And oftentimes the US is obviously pioneering certain things in the biohacking space. So what they actually realized quite quickly is that certain professional groups that are exposed to a higher number of toxin concentrations have a greater need to detoxify. In this instance, with firefighters, professional firefighters, where doctors and health professionals essentially observed an increased correlation in diseases that they would suffer. So you're talking lung cancer or any other autoimmune diseases that essentially are linked to the high intake of toxins through their day-to-day work. And these firefighting centers would then actually go out and invest into infrared saunas. Now you wonder why? Well, if you understand, obviously, that sweating helps the body to detoxify, and that you see actually higher concentration of toxins in these professionals, then these people also have a greater need to detoxify, and they achieved that through having infrared saunas at the firefighting stations. And I haven't actually read, whether the percentages or the correlation of severe diseases such as lung cancer has gone down. But that is, for instance, one of the observations that you can see. And overall, I think following from that, you actually saw a lot more detoxification experts, clinics, health centers incorporating infrared saunas in order to fully detoxify from heavy metals. My last sentence on that before I shut up is there are a couple of health or detoxification protocols that people can do at home. Again, I cannot recommend them because I'm not a doctor, but for someone that actually wanted to learn more about it, you can actually read on the niacin detox protocol, which combines exercise and niacin and a sauna, ideally an infrared sauna, to really detoxify the body effectively. And there are 10,000s of people out there with major successes. It's not scientifically been approved, although there are doctors that actively recommend it. But that is something to really learn more if you wanted to explore more about detoxification.
Really interesting. So you can tell us also how long should we stay in an infrared sauna? It's really depending.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. Look, the honest answer is that it really depends. Like there's no body is the same. There are major differences in men and women. There are even major differences in the seasonality that we use a sauna for. Every body is different, and our constitution is very different too. Obviously, what you do want to achieve is you want to start sweating.
Yeah.
That is fundamentally important, because if we understand that, sweat is one of the drivers for detoxification, well, then we do want to go in the sauna and sweat. By the way, there are also internal processes that essentially happen when we raise the core temperature that also yield and support the detoxification. But the number one driver for detoxification is sweating. Mm-hmm. So therefore, typically, that means that if you haven't actually done an infrared sauna before, we recommend you stay at least 20 minutes in there, because it takes some time for your body to get used to that, to the type of heat activation, because it's fundamentally different to a traditional sauna. And if for those that essentially are experienced sauna users, you can probably stay up to 40 to 45 minutes in there. Although I would guarantee that you're sweating very, very profusely, and that it'll probably be quite challenging for you to stay that long in the infrared sauna. You might only have 50 or 60 degrees Celsius in there, but remember, it's not the air temperature that truly matters in an infrared sauna, but it's the infrared heating panels that raise your core temperature. So to summarize, 20 to 45 minutes. The golden rule is really you want to be comfortable at all times, so don't overdo it. If you find it challenging, then take another 3 deep breaths and then go out of the sauna. If you stay longer, you might essentially feel dizzy or fatigued, and that's usually a sign that you've overdone it. And therefore start slowly and then potentially increase the session time.
Great, thank you. And you also mentioned the Omnos test. I just maybe give a quick ad, because I did an episode with Thomas Olivier about his test, and the test you mentioned in the episode 74. So just who are interested on those kind of tests, they can maybe learn more in that specific episode. And about relaxing, you also mentioned the benefit of relaxing the body with the infrared sauna. Can you maybe tell us how does relaxing in an infrared sauna make us healthier? So you also talk about the impacting the autonomic nervous system, and I think is linked there, but maybe you can explain a bit better.
Absolutely. I mean, I think by now probably everyone knows that we really have the nervous system has two modes. Right? One is the fight or flight, which essentially is a type of stress state for the human body that really signals, ooh, there's danger, or ooh, I'm stressed, or I have a deadline, I need to work. And then we have a rest and digest mode, the parasympathetic nervous system, which essentially signals the body that, hey, everything is good, it's now rest time, it's digest time, take it easy, take it slow, and the entire body relaxes. And this is, and I'm not an expert on the nervous system. In fact, I'd love to actually speak with someone that really understands the nervous system too. But what science and what we know nowadays, that it's not just our mind that essentially relaxes. Essentially, our entire body is under stress if we are in the sympathetic nervous system state. So if we are actually in stress mode. Our entire body, meaning our cells, which is technically why a lot of experts believe that high levels of stress do cause diseases. It's literally like that, because the body is being signaled, hey, we are under attack. Like, we need to protect ourselves. We need to be on the run. We need to be on the fence. And therefore, I think it's a major problem if we can't actually really do stress control. And I think we see that, if you look at some of the countries such as the US or also Australia, the number one reason for all-cause mortality is cardiovascular disease. I think in Australia it's more than 50% that die, in some way or form of a cardiovascular disease. So that could be a stroke, or it could be a heart attack. And, it's very, very clear nowadays that this is linked to stress. And I think this is just the way the society is at the moment, or this is the way that we as human beings prioritize. Stress can have different forms. It can be work stress, it can be financial pressure, it can be emotional stress, it can be internally actually not being quite in tune. And I myself know that too. Like, the reason why I am taking this sabbatical at the moment is that I have problems with high stress, and I obviously don't want this to become a potential health issue for me in the long run, which is why I'm really taking a break to making sure that it works. And I think if we now know that stress can be lethal, I think we should have every interest in mitigating stress. And now you can do that through exercise, although this technically is a type of positive stress. You can do that through breathing. For instance, if you do the box breathing, 4-4-4 through the nose, for instance, that helps regulate the nervous system. Or you can use a sauna or an infrared sauna, which technically has been shown to reduce stress symptoms and really help you shift into a rest and digest, or rest and technically a relaxed mode. And why is that? Well, when we're in the sauna, most likely we actually don't have a phone with us. Most likely we're not, probably juggling our kids cooking dinner and probably taking a phone call from mom or dad at the same time. So it really actually can be a great practice for self-care. That's really what it is. We are reducing the number of stresses and the noise in and around us by going into the sauna, because technically you shouldn't actually take any electrical device in the sauna. The sauna is really there to be quiet, to meditate, to maybe do some relaxing breathing sessions, maybe meet a friend and socialize. But all of that really helps you to pause the brain, to pause the stress, and really shift into that relaxing mode. And that's why a lot of people actually say that, if I use an infrared sauna before bedtime, I sleep like a baby. And sure, it's maybe the feeling of having had a sweat and having had a workout and maybe a cold shower afterwards, but I would almost take a bet that this is also due to the fact that we actually did not watch a movie or did not scroll social media, but we literally did half an hour of doing nothing, ideally, maybe reading a book, and all of that essentially helps quiet the mind and reduce stress levels.
Awesome. And another topic you are very interested in is EMF and ELF. Can you maybe explain what are EMF and ELF and why, for instance, Clearlight Sauna model are the only infrared sauna that cancel out both of them, like EMF and ELF, but maybe it's better if you explain what they are.
Sure. It's a very technical topic, but if I try to really simplify things, then I think everyone would agree with me that you don't want to sleep on a Wi-Fi router. I think everyone understands, right, that a Wi-Fi router emits sometimes some type of signal. It also emits some type of radiation. So that's fundamentally what it is. And EMF technically stands for electromagnetic frequencies. What the Germans like to call it, they like to call it electrosmog. So it's a type of negative smog, but it's not in the air, it's not pollutants or anything, that is being created through electrical appliances, or appliances in general. And electromagnetic obviously says that there are two poles, plus and minus, and it's an invisible field that builds up around something where you have electricity running through it. So this could be a microwave, or it could be your phone. All of these, when you charge them, and a phone, even when you not charge them, receives some type of signal. And EMF is the best understood and the simplest form, meaning, if you have a current that runs, so you charge your phone, then you have an EMF buildup around the cable. The stronger the electrical current is, the higher the EMF rating. The World Health Organization has set a standard of 2.5 milligauss as the maximum, or 3 milligauss as the maximum. Milligauss is a physical unit, so you can actually just look it up. But this is not, it's not a very high number. Like, if you, for instance, measured on your microwave, it would be a lot higher, because they consume a lot more electricity. ELF stands for extremely low frequencies. It's a different type of frequency, but again, it's invisible, and it does have an effect on the human body. It's an electrical field that is measured in volt per meter, And also when you have actually electricity running, so if you charge your phone, you also have ELF as part of the natural occurrence of electricity, of any type of electricity. And then you have high frequencies, which you can call Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. They also emit some kind of radiance, because they obviously do send a signal, right? Like if we use Bluetooth, great, then we have music, and obviously there's some sort of information signaling. And I think around 10 to 15 years ago, it became very clear that these high exposures of EMF and ELF do have an effect on the human body. It is not yet fully understood how exactly and what exactly, but for instance, even the World Health Organization, which oftentimes is very, very conservative, says that high exposure of EMF can lead to insomnia, to headaches, to a weaker immune system. There are some health experts out there that obviously say it can also be linked to cancer or other autoimmune diseases. So therefore it does have an effect on the body. And what we naturally want to do is we want to keep the EMF exposure as minimal as possible, which is obviously why ideally you shouldn't have Wi-Fi in your home. I have Wi-Fi at home too, although I turn it off at night. But naturally really try to mitigate it as much as possible. There are even building biologists, they're called out there, that come into your home. They help you actually reduce EMF and ELF significantly. All of this is really important in an infrared sauna. And the question is why? And the answer is really that infrared saunas have a lot of heating panels inside the unit. I mean, Vanessa, you've seen the sauna in Amsterdam, for instance, and when you sit inside the sauna, you literally have infrared heaters all around you, on your back wall, on the right wall, the left wall, the front, and obviously all of these heaters need some sort of electricity supply, right, in order for these heaters to get hot. And that's why in every infrared sauna, naturally, you have a very high exposure of EMF and ELF. But obviously, if we design an infrared sauna with the optimum health in mind, then it is counterintuitive or counterproductive to have high exposure of EMF and ELF. And that's what we started around 10 to 12 years ago, to really design an infrared sauna that probably has the lowest EMF and ELF readings on the market. Again, I don't want to promise this because I haven't seen every infrared sauna in the world, but from all the ones that I know in Europe, for instance, I would probably hands down say that our infrared saunas are the lowest when it comes to EMF and ELF, which is why, for instance, we have a lot of health conscious people that purchase from us, but we also have a lot of sick people that purchase from us. In Germany, for instance, electrosensitivity has actually been recognized as a disease. So people that have been exposed to higher levels of EMF and ELF, they get almost like a migraine. They get headaches, and they can't really cope well. We have a lot of people with this type of disease that buy from us because they say there's literally not another brand out there that really has thought about low EMF and ELF exposure.
Wow, beautiful. And as you said, there are many types of infrared saunas available for almost any budget, from really exotic built-ins to simply portable units. All those solutions, I think, are not really safe. But what you think about those solutions? And for example, also the blanket, because many people that have like a small budget go to this solution to have some infrared sauna at a lower price. Do you suggest this solution, or it's important to be aware of different problems?
Look, I think when it comes to the decision of whether an infrared sauna or not, for financial reasons, then I think it's absolutely fair to say, use a blanket. I don't think they're particularly effective, and the reason for this is that, that's not, the answer to that is really that this is not how infrared works. If we know that infrared is light, then, we understand that obviously these blankets and let me put it differently. A lot of the blanket manufacturers say that you need to open the blanket and then you you need to put yourself in a towel, and then you close the zipper or you close the blanket, and then you sweat. This is fundamentally not how infrared works. Infrared is like light, right? So it essentially travels in straight lines. If you think about being in the sun, if you expose your left arm into the sun, the arm will tan, but the right side or the right arm that has not been in the sun probably will not tan, which is why we have a sunburn, for instance, only on parts of the body. That's the same analogy here when it comes to the blanket. If you are not exposed to an infrared heater directly, then you're not actually getting the benefits of infrared. It's literally not possible. So that's the first arm. The second one is the wavelength of an infrared heater is determined by the surface temperature, right? So, for instance, in our cabins, we've designed a carbon and ceramic heater, and we know that the surface temperature of these needs to be around 85 to 150 degrees Celsius. Why is that? Because we want this heater to be close to the 9.4 microns, which is the human frequency that we as human beings absorb and emit infrared heat effectively. That's why it's so important. Now, 85 to 150 degrees is too hot to create in a blanket. Like, people would literally burn, right? Which is essentially why you're supposed to put a towel around you. But the problem is that this towel blocks the type of infrared. It's literally blocked. So it's more like a sleeping bag that heats it up from the inside, and then you start to sweat. Is it still sweating? Absolutely. And is it good for the cardiovascular system? Yes. But to me, this is not an infrared sauna blanket. To me, it's essentially like a hot sleeping bag. And the problem is that these manufacturers have not fully understood, or maybe don't want to admit, on how infrared heat is being generated. But to me, it's a good invention because it's low cost. I don't want to talk about EMF and plastics. I think a lot of people know that the materials used in these blankets aren't good. Like, let's be honest, like, if a blanket costs 500 euros, this thing costs $60, $80 to make. The rest is shipping, marketing, taxes, profits, etc. So it's very cheap materials that are often used, and it's not good infrared heaters that are used, but it will make you sweat, and that's good.
Great. So thank you for your honest answer. I appreciate it. And another biohacking tool is the photobiomodulation. I'm a big fan of photobiomodulation, so the infrared panels. We talk a lot in the biohacking community about the healing powers of photobiomodulation. Can you dive into this topic to make maybe people aware of what is it? And because many people ask me about different brands, and they don't really get the difference between brand and brands and panels. So maybe you can make a good explanation about this topic, because I think it's important.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it's very confusing. I think let's maybe start with explaining what the difference between a photobiomodulation or red light therapy device and an infrared sauna.
Great.
Because I think a lot of people don't really understand it. They say, well, why my infrared sauna has already red light? Is that not the same as red light therapy? The answer is no. An infrared sauna is a heat therapy. The overall goal of this infrared sauna is to raise your core temperature. We talked about that. It raises your core temperature, vessel dilation, cardiovascular work, detoxification through sweat, etc., etc. So everything is focused on heating your core temperature. And this is being achieved through infrared heat. So you're talking far, middle, and near infrared combined, which technically can be wavelength from 800 nanometers up to 15 micrometers. So quite a big range. Red light therapy or photobiomodulation is a type of light therapy. I think that, to me, that it makes the most sense, and I think the people that I've explained this to, they understand that this is a difference. What do I mean by that? Well, the goal of the red light therapy is not to raise your core temperature. It's often also referred to as some type of cold red light therapy, and I think it helps people to understand that, because I'm sure you grew up also with these type of red light bulbs.
Yes.
That when you actually had a cold, you sort of put these on your face. It sort of increases it causes vasodilation, and through that we feel actually better, and the symptoms of a clogged up sinuses essentially are being eased away. But that's not what this red light therapy is. The name is very confusing, but it's a type of light therapy. So when you use red light therapy, you don't actually sweat. You don't, it doesn't feel hot. In fact, you can probably stay in there for, in front of the light for 30 to 45 minutes, and you won't actually sweat because it's cold red light therapy. And red light therapy works by stimulating the photons that we have, the photoreceptors that we have in our skin. And these in turn activate our mitochondria, and these in turn produce more ATP, which then gives the body more energy, and a whole lot of other things that have been very well studied. And red light therapy uses red light, which is why it's really, really bright. You almost can't look into this light. It's so bright, with a wavelength of 600 to 660 nanometers, and a very, very specific part of the near-infrared spectrum, 800 to 860 nanometers. And when these two type of frequencies come together, meaning red light and near-infrared with these mentioned wavelengths, that's when the effect of photobiomodulation appears in our body, when we expose naked skin to this light. So, and again, we won't sweat. We won't burn. It actually won't feel hot. And the reason is that it's light, and sure, the light feels nice and warm, but it's not hot. And this light actually in turn activates our mitochondria and gives the body more energy. So fundamentally, two different things. One is heat therapy, the other one is light therapy. They both are great for mitochondria. They both are good for our health. They both have been studied for many decades, and there are hundreds of studies in both of them, but fundamentally different in the way that they work. And when it comes to picking a good red light therapy device, we produce our own under the name Aurora. And there are a few things that I believe are important. Number one, I wouldn't just buy from any supplier online that you can find. You don't actually really know whether the wavelengths are true. A really good spectral meter, meaning a device that measures the different wavelengths, costs around 3,000 euros. And, so therefore, and if you know that you need these two specific wavelengths in order to produce photobiomodulation, then you really don't want to, buy a cheap product that might actually really not have the wavelength, and you can't find out about it because you don't essentially have the same meter on that. So I would buy from a good company. I would buy from a company that gives a good warranty. These things last. It's made from LEDs. Typically, these should last at least 3 years, which is why good manufacturers give at least 3 years on that device. You want to buy low flicker. So LEDs, obviously, because they use AC, alternating current, they essentially turn on and off. That's how AC works, multiple times a second, and this causes some sort of stress for the cells, but also for our eye. Dr. Alexander Wunsch, for instance, who's a very renowned light expert from Germany, he really talks a lot about this stress that flicker rates from LED, due to the fact that we use AC instead of DC, cause. But you can actually even, you can even buy red light therapy devices that use a low flicker rate, which is why I think it's good to look out for a manufacturer that says specifically low flicker. You can also test this, by the way. If you take your iPhone or your phone and you record it, and then you play the video in a tenth or 25% of the speed, you will actually see the flickering on the red light therapy. Intensity is a very important one. Intensity is measured in watts or milliwatts per area, so typically per square centimeter, for instance. It's recommended to use this device for 10 to 15 minutes at a distance of 15 to 20 centimeters, and you want to have a relatively high intensity of probably more than 100 milliwatts per square centimeter. Again, not higher is not always better. But as a rule of thumb, you really want a nice and intense red light therapy to really give you all the benefits.
Fantastic. And maybe how do you suggest to use red light devices?
Look, it depends. I mean, it really comes down to, I think the most important thing is that you actually use it. I think that's, a lot of people just buy it and then they don't use it. It's the same with a traditional sauna. A lot of people buy a traditional sauna, but then it takes an hour to heat up and then they actually don't use it. I love traditional saunas, but, I can't do that during the week. It takes too much time, which is why I use an infrared sauna, because it only takes 15 to 20 minutes, to preheat, and then I try to do a traditional sauna on the weekend. But when it comes to using all of these appliances, you can use them however works for you. You can use them in the morning, which is great to reduce cortisol. It's actually great to have some really high quality light. Absorbed. If you use red light therapy in the morning, it gives you more energy throughout the day. It helps shift the circadian rhythm, for instance. But you can also use it at nighttime, because it's a type of light quality that actually does not mess around with your melatonin, right? Which is why, for instance, you can also use it at nighttime. Any type of light technically activates the body, especially if it's blue light. But red light therapy is free of blue light. If it's low flicker, brilliant, and it doesn't cause any stress. You can do it before a workout. You can do it after the workout. If you do it beforehand, typically you have more performance. If you use it after the workout, then typically it enhances your recovery. So, there's a lot of different ways. You can use it while you meditate. You can use it while you do yoga. We actually have a red light therapy device that you can integrate into the sauna, right? So you can actually use it at the same time as a sauna. So it really, there's so many different ways, but the most important one is for you to figure out that you actually use it.
Yeah.
That's the most important one.
I agree 100%. Maybe a difference that I saw in myself, I have like a full body, I have four panels, and I do it always in the morning because it activates a lot. So if I do 4 panels, full body, in the evening, for me, it mess up a little bit in my sleep, but again, it's something really personal. And but I say it sometimes for people that maybe ask me the difference between full body light therapy or just like a little panels that you can put in just a part of the body that you can do it all over the day. What do you think about this solution?
Makes sense. I think especially what you said around the sleep is important, because that's why I said any type of intense light before sleeping essentially activates the body. So that makes perfect sense. And I think using light in the morning is probably the number one thing you can do. It doesn't have to be red light therapy. You can just go out for a walk and just enjoy some daylight. But it's been very, very well studied, and it's very public knowledge that using light after ideally 5 to 10 minutes of waking up helps reset cortisol levels, and it really helps actually to be off to a good start. And I think if you can do red light therapy, brilliant. I think you're really recharging the mitochondria. You're really helping resetting the circadian rhythm. And obviously, healthy mitochondria give us more energy throughout the day. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, especially in the wintertime when it's raining, maybe a full week. If you have red light therapy, you feel the difference. Also, like in the mood, you are more
absolutely
more happy, even if the weather is not so good outside.
Absolutely, and I think this time, obviously, of a year where November, I think, is a very, very awful month. Like it's really dark, it's really grey, and we have a lack of light.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally true, and that is the same. I'm sure where you are, it's the same in northern Germany. The winter months are tough, which is why people use SAD lights, why they use red light therapy, why some of them actually use vitamin D lights, right? Because we need more light in order to function well.
And many people ask me if red light therapy is harmful for our eyes. I know there is like a research that said that it's a certain frequency is good also for the eyes. But I personally close my eyes. I don't wear goggles. But do you think it's important to protect our eyes, or usually not?
Look, I think it really depends on the intensity. If you use it for 4 hours a day, probably it's intense, But I think what you can also do is the potential health issues are shown in near-infrared and not red light. So this intense red light, actually, there's been a study, I think, that really linked 730 or I forgot the exact wavelength to actually improved eyesight if you did 3 minutes first thing in the morning, just red light therapy. So therefore, I think it's definitely shown to be good for the eye. However, near-infrared, when it's really intense, can potentially have damage on their eye. But I think the study that really quoted that, they looked at someone that was welding for many hours per day. And obviously that comparison doesn't work. I mean, you're only using the red light therapy for 10 minutes a day maximum. I don't look at it because it's too bright for me. I just genuinely can't look into it. It's so bright. But I also don't close my eyes. And in fact, sometimes I read in front of it. And I don't believe it's dangerous. But obviously, everything is a question of the dose.
Yes.
If you hot shower for an hour, it's probably also dangerous. If you cold shower for an hour, it's probably also dangerous, right? But we're talking about 5 to 10 minutes, ideally once per day, and most people won't even do that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so you talk also about combining your infrared sauna. You combine also with red light therapy. What are the benefits? So you combine basically the benefit of light therapy and heating therapy, right?
Yeah, I think, our vision is really that we produce an infrared sauna that is the best on the market. And that, that's why we give a lifetime warranty. It's why we obviously have these patented carbon ceramic heaters. We've done a lot of really cool stuff over the last few years, but our mission and our vision and mission has always been to make the infrared sauna and the Clearlight sauna so valuable that if people only had 1 hour per day to spend on their health, this would be the go-to device that they would use, right? So we're essentially trying to stack different health therapies into the sauna, so therefore you obviously use a sauna. We have a red light therapy that you can integrate into the sauna so that you can do it at the same time. We have a salt inhaler. So this thing essentially puts very, very fine particles of high quality and highly concentrated salt into the air. This, you breathe it in, therefore it's actually really good for your sinuses and for your nostril system. We have aromatherapy that obviously you can integrate into the sauna. We have a vibrational resonance therapy, and there are a few other things that we're working on. But the vision has always been, how can we make 20 to 45 minutes of an infrared sauna session as valuable as possible? And that's essentially why we integrated red light therapy.
Great. And how, maybe if you can talk about the daily routine. You have already mentioned that it depends really on the person, on his schedule, but how can we integrate infrared sauna into our daily routine? There is a way that can help us at the beginning, for beginners.
Yeah, I think, to me, that's probably the number one thing why I believe infrared saunas are so powerful. Because, it doesn't actually take a whole lot of time. If you look at a traditional sauna, they typically take an hour to preheat because they obviously need to reach the desired temperature. And then they also consume a lot of electricity. Oftentimes they use 4 to 6 to 8 kilowatts of electricity. And it's a beautiful ritual. I absolutely love traditional saunas. But during the week, I do not have 2 hours per day to really use the sauna, meaning 1 hour to preheat it. And then, 3 rounds of 10 to 15 minutes with breaks in between. I simply don't have the time. I think that's truly where infrared saunas shine, because, the preheating time is 15 to maybe 25 minutes, depending on how hot you like it. Technically after 15 minutes, the sauna is ready. Then you use it for 20 to 45 minutes. So in under 1 hour, you actually have managed to get a sauna session in for a fraction of the cost. Like a one-person sauna would draw 1,600 watts. That is, I don't know, maybe 40 cents per hour of using the sauna. So it's very, very affordable to actually to do that. And you can literally do it every day. So you can, you could potentially do it 7 times a week or 5 times a week, and then you take the weekend off. It absolutely works. And I think that's what the research indicates too, is, the more often you do it, the healthier it gets. Your whole system gets, used to it. You condition your system. And that's really what the sauna study that frankly did use it with traditional saunas showed, that 5 to 7 times a week reduced the all-cause mortality risk in men at 43 to 45%. So it's a significant number, and that's what I like about infrared saunas. They're so easy to incorporate them. Hardly takes any electricity. You can use them inside, outside. You can put them in the basement, and the bathroom, and the sleeping room, and the living room. It doesn't really matter. And you just use it. And that's what we hear from a lot of people who actually say, look, I don't find the time to use my traditional sauna during the week.
Awesome. And can you maybe go through the main differences between Clearlight Saunas models? I know that you have like a different models, and maybe to get an idea of what people can find and the difference between the different models.
Sure. I mean, I think, we are one of the premium sauna brands in the market. We talked about EMF and ELF. I think we're truly the market leader when it comes to that worldwide. There is a lifetime warranty on there. We use eco-certified materials. And I think we have a lot of really, really cool people that use our saunas. Ben Greenfield uses our sauna. Most European biohackers use our sauna. Edward de Wilde, Timo Arena from the festival that you were obviously in Amsterdam as well. And that to me is the biggest compliment that we can do, because these people, they wouldn't use anything but the best, and they decide to go with Clearlight. When it comes to the different models that we have 3 or 4 different models. The difference is the wood. Some of them are made from Nordic spruce, others are made from cedar wood. Some are far infrared, others are full spectrum. Full spectrum means it has all the types of infrared combined, near, middle, and far infrared in one sauna, as opposed to just far and mid infrared. The smallest one is 1 square meter. The biggest one is literally 2 meters by 1.5 meters. So it's a very big unit. We have some for indoor, some for outdoor. So you can really pick whatever works for you. And depending on the size, obviously, especially in Switzerland, you might actually need a different electrical socket. But for most of Europe, because most of Europe is on 16 amps, it's not a problem at all.
Great. And as you said, like sweating is an ancient tradition and a good method of removing toxin. So we understood that. People have been detoxing and restoring themselves this way throughout the history. And for you, what has changed in nowadays, and which direction are we going to?
You mean in terms of sweat therapy?
Yeah, sweat therapy, and also, detoxifying and restoring processes. But
a good question. I mean, I think thankfully, saunas are very popular at the moment. I think, especially in the biohacking world, and I think also in the research world, saunas have gained a lot of popularity. A lot of people like Huberman or Peter Attia or Ben Greenfield, even Dave Asprey, they talk a lot about saunas and about sweat therapy. And I'm sure that is for reasons of detoxification, but it's also for cardiovascular reasons, for hypothermia reasons. So it really just is, a really good program altogether. And I think it's very, very challenging to actually mimic that outside of a sauna. I mean, even if you used an hour of spinning, you probably wouldn't actually get the same benefits. I mean, sure, you would sweat a lot, your heart rate would go up a lot, and maybe you actually get similar benefits, but it would cost you a lot more energy, and it would be a lot more exhausting as opposed to sitting in an infrared sauna for 30 to 45 minutes. So, I think therefore, thankfully, there's a big trend for saunas. There's a big trend for ice bath at the moment. And where this is going to, I don't know. I mean, I would hope that every household has some of these devices, right? Like how similar to how we have a washing machine or a dishwasher. And I know that example is very over-exaggerated, so please excuse that. But wouldn't it be terrific if every household had a sauna, an ice bath, and maybe red light therapy?
Yeah.
We know that this stuff works. We know that, that studies have shown the benefits. If we get to use these on a day-to-day basis, wouldn't we all be happier, healthier, and more fulfilled? And with that, hopefully less sick, and with that, hopefully we would fight less wars and have less conflicts in the world. I don't know, it might be a bit of an illusionist or a visionary, but that's really what I would hope for.
Great. And maybe one of my last question about your health journey. Which are the daily routine that have worked the best for you and that you keep doing consistently?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's really small things too. I drink a glass of hot water every morning. I try to do some sort of mindfulness or meditation in the morning. Sometimes it could be yoga, sometimes it could be breath work, sometimes it could be journaling, sometimes it could be going for a walk. But I really try to do that before I do anything else. And then what really works for me well is exercise in the morning, and not because it feels necessarily great, but because I then get it done. I start the day, and if work takes longer at the end, then I already have it. I forgot actually that I often use a red light therapy. Obviously now I'm traveling, I don't have one with me, but I really try to maximize sun instead. But if I was at home, I'd sort of use red light therapy alongside the mindfulness practice. And then, some sort of movement or exercise, really try to nail those 10,000 steps, which I don't always do. And if I can, I use a sauna and an ice bath. Like, to me, that's, I don't know, we were at this Wim Hof retreat last week, and every day sauna and ice bath, every single day, sometimes even twice an ice bath and twice a sauna, just because it just feels so amazing to do that. And then it's obviously a lot of spiritual stuff we can do. We can think positively, we can manifest, we can actively take a break and actively pause as opposed to constantly doing stuff. I think that's probably my favorite things.
Great, thank you. And do you have maybe any particular message that you want to spread to our listeners?
I mean, I'm a fan of sweating. Sweat is negatively associated in modern society. We come to work, and we sweat it, and if we don't feel clean, and we might smell. I genuinely think, like, if you can sweat, that's actually terrific. There are a lot of people nowadays that can't sweat. And the reasons for that could be multiple. Could be cosmetica, could be hormonal things, it could be just lack of exercise over the years. And so consider yourself very fortunate when you can sweat. And if you can sweat, really use it. Try to work out and break a sweat. Try to go in the sauna and break a sweat. And always think about the fact that that's actually really good. And my last message might actually be that, try to find comfort in the uncomfortable. I think ice bath or cold showers is probably the number one thing where you can practice that. But if you actually enjoy being cold, and I'm sure when you're under the cold shower, it's not enjoyable, but the moment that you come out of it, actually feels amazing. So try to really use that as a daily reminder to practice some sort of discomfort and finding comfort in that.
Wow. Thank you, Johannes, for your insight and your wisdom. I really enjoyed chatting with you today. So thank you a lot for your time. And I will leave all your references and contacts in the show notes of this episode. And I wish you all the best for this part of the year that you are taking some time off, and enjoy life. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.